This is Gemara Metziah Daf Vav, and for one final day, we like to dedicate today's learning. It is an incredible zchus Rafua Shlema for Yeshua ben Sarah Devaira B'siyata D'Shemaya. The learning should bring an incredible and complete Rafua Shlema. We pick it up in the very bottom of Yudalid Amid Beis. We're in the middle of discussing the Shita of Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel and different rayos back and forth. And the case is in which one improves a field, and the question is, the field that he improved, unfortunately, was found whether it was stolen or some other issue with that field. And the question is, what does he get back for his fields? From Nachman or Shmuel said that if someone buys a field and then he realizes afterwards he bought stolen goods, all he gets is the price that he paid for the field, but the improvements that he added into the field, the money that he spent, that he cannot collect. And we said, even if this was halfway down the Amud and Yidalim Meveis, even if he explicitly said that he's accepting responsibility for the shvach, meaning when he bought the field, the seller said, don't worry, I'm going to pay you for everything in the event of any mishap. Still, he's not obligated to compensate for the loss of the money that was put into the field. What's the reason? Because since it's a form of ribbis, because it looks like I didn't really buy anything to you. I gave you $100 for your field, which wasn't really yours. And now if I'm collecting back $150, it looks like ribbis. So in the last line of Yidalad Mebeis, the Gemara continues, Rabba Bar Ravuna Amar, and this is in reality explaining a brisa in which we are trying to Lachilas Piras Kesad, and the Mishnah, the brisa said, Gozal Sadam Chavirai, Vari Yotze V'Tachas Yadav. So Kishu Kaiva is like Karim Chasim Shavadu Piras Kavim Chasim B'nei Chayrin. So you're trying to figure out what is the case in that brisa. So now says Rabba Bar Ravuna Amar Kigoin, another way of learning the brisa. As we turn over to Tezvav Amar Aleph, Shenatulua Masikin. The Masikin, who are Masikin? Masikin are these powerful non-Jews, as the top Rashi points out. They are Anosim. They are those that force one to give away his land. Anosim Akum. And these were Goyim, Natulua, Mina Gazlan. They took it from the Gazlan. Umachmasai. Utanan b'Bava Kama, and we learned at the very end of Bava Kama, Goizal Sadam Echaverai, V'Natlua Masikin Imachmasai Gazlan Chayev Lahamiloi Sada Acher, V'Yotze V'Tachas Yadoi Dikton Netilos Masikin Hu. So the case is in which we have these extortionists come along and they confiscate the field, and there's two ways that they could confiscate the field. We're talking about a case in which they did such due to the Gazlan. They took it based off of his. So now, what's the case? Says the Gemara in the top line. But Nigzal Ligvois Karen, when the one whom the field was stolen from comes to collect the Karen, meaning he paid for this field, now it was taken from him. I should say better, the original owner. So says the Gemara, we're going to have two different ways of learning this brisa, which is going to bring us back to the explanations of Rav and Abaye of the previous Amud. Rav Amar Karab, says the Gemara, Rav Amar Karab Ravuna. Why? What is Yotze Mitachas Yadai? When the brisa says that he takes it from him, that sounds like Bedina Mashma. It doesn't sound like it's a case of Masikin. The case of Masikin is not Yotze Mitachas Yadai. Some guy comes and just steals the field back. Why? Yotze Mitachas Yadai Be'ena Mashma. Because Yotze Mitachas Yadai implies that it's on Be'en, it's in its original form. As Rashi on the third line says, Kamoisha Aisa, and not like Rava explains, Shachavar by Bayre Shichin Uma Ares. Rav Ashi Amar comes along Rav Ashi with a third way of learning the Braisa. Amar Litzadim, let's split it in half. Two different things going on over here. Litzadim Katani. Kigayin Shagazal Sada Mechavirai Mala Peris. The case is someone steals a field from his friend that's filled with Peris. So he eats the Peris. And what does he do with the field? He sells it. So one that comes to buy Ligvais Karen. So afterwards, when the field is taken back from him, so the one who bought the field comes to collect his money back. So what does he get the Karen from? When he comes to come back to Peiros that are on the field back, that so says the Gemara, the three different ways of learning the Brisa. But now says the Gemara, let's go back. Bein the Rava, bein the Rabba, bein the Rava, bein the Rava, bein the Rabba. If you look at Rashi, about 6 lines down, Rashi points out, Demukmi Gvias Karen min agazlon benigzal ha milval peu v'loitarvim mishabdi. Says the Gemara. So we're going back and having a fundamental question. Bein the Rava asks the Gemara. Bein the Rava, Ravuna, excuse me. Milval peu negayz. Ask the Gemara, nothing here is recorded, nothing here is written down. So according to both of them that we're discussing, that the original owner is coming to get back his money from the Gazlan, this should be similar to Milval Peh. So why is there a discussion at all on the Chasim Mishubadim? The halacha always is that a Milval Peh never gets more than B'nei Chayrin. Explains the Gemara. What's going on over here is that there was a court case, and then Vahadar Zavin, and then he sold the other lands. So because Bezdin obligates him, therefore, an obligation of Bezdin is equivalent to a milva bishtar, and therefore the collection could be made subsequently from the chasim mishubadim. Says the Gemara, 1 second, if that's the case, Yachi Peres Nami. So it should be the same thing. We're splitting. Saying the land you get from mishubadim, the peiros you get from B'nei Chayr. Why? Says the Gemara, if what's going on over here was Amad Bedin and there was a court case, so everything should come, Yachi Peres Nami should come from mishubadim. Says the Gemara, Ksham Bedin ala Karen, V'lo Amad Bedin al ha-Peres. No, it was a partial Hamada Bedin. And of course, the classical kasha on my paska. And where do we see to make such a split that we're making this case? It's a very unique case that it was half talking about a half court case on the land, but on the peiros. Says the Gemara, Stama de Milsa Kitava Inish Karna Tava Beresha. Makes sense. And of course, it is misvara. That why do you go to court first? First thing you want is the karen. First thing you want is the principal. So that's what happened. And there was no court case yet about the peiros. So the principal you could get from Mishubadim, in as much as the peiros you're only going to be able to get from B'nei Chayrin. Says the Gemara, V'savar Shmuel lokech migazan lesli shvacha. Says the Gemara, let's go back now to the opinion of Shmuel. According to Shmuel, someone who buys land, which of course the land was stolen, said Shmuel, Leslie Shvacha, you don't get compensation for the Shvach. As we started off today, quoting the original memra of Shmuel, if I buy a piece of land from someone, and if at the end of the day it happened to be, guess what? I didn't buy anything. It was stolen goods. So said Shmuel, you could get back the keren, the original, the price of the land, but the shvach, that which you bettered the land, that you do not get. Ask the Gemara why. You should decide and write. You have to write all these items. Shofra is the best property, shvacha is the improvement, Uperi is the produce. So what do we see? We're focusing, of course, on the shvach. Says Gemara B'mai, what exactly did Shmuel mean when he said these three items should be recorded? Even Baal Chayv, Miyaslei Peiris, no such thing. A Baal Chayv doesn't get back to Peiris. Amr Shmuel Baal Chayv Gaiva says Shavach. Shavach in Aval Peiris Lai. Elalav Lekech Migazlan. Talk about you buy from a Gazlan. And what did Shmuel tell him to write down? Shofra and the Shvacha. That you're going to be able to even collect the Shvach. You're going to get back that which you better the field. So why did Shmuel Bayal say you don't get back the Shvach of the Karka? Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yosef, Achamay Eskinon. Kigoin sheyesh loy karka. The case is in which the Gazlan had land, and therefore, when the lokeach, again, someone buys a piece of land, and that land ends up being stolen. So the Gazlan himself, when he reimburses with the land, and therefore, because he's reimbursing for land, therefore you're, able to give back for the shvach. Why? The whole reason you weren't able to give back for the shvach, according to Shmuel, was because Mechzi Karibis was this fascinating entity that it looks like I gave $100 and then 2 months later I'm getting back $150. Now it's true. It's because there were stolen goods and I put money into the field, but no one sees that. So there's a ribis issue. But if the Gazlan pays back with karka, there's no ribis issue. Because then I'm just getting back one piece of field. Amr le Abaye, says Abaye, 1 second. B'makav sheyesh loy karka. Sabisa is the halacha that you're not allowed to borrow one item and get back another item because the price fluctuates, etc. So says Abaye, just because you're getting back karka, does it make it all mutter? Amar le responds, Asam halva chazvini. In a real halva, you're right. In a real ribis, you're right. It doesn't have yesh loy karka, but by us, really, it was a sale. It's one big mechzi. So in such a case, it will work. Teretz number 2, we could Amri Amar Rav Yosef Achamay Eskinon. Go Shekana Miyad made a kin. Amar le Bayev Chemot Levasav Sav Makim Shekana Miyad. Amar le Asma Leva Hacha Zvini. And that really wraps up. We'll call it yesterday's shir, bringing us to the 2 dots. But the truth is, even here at the 2 dots, in the middle of the Amid, as we'll see right now, Gufa, it's a continuation of the exact same conversation. Gufa. Amar Shmuel Baal Chayv Gavus Shavach. What did Shmuel say? That the Baal Chayv, in the case of a Baal Chayv, I should say, then you, get the shvach. When do we say you don't get the shvach? When you bought a piece of land that ends up being stolen goods. But says Shmuel, when it's a case of a Baal Chayv that you're collecting, then you, will get back that which the land was improved. Amar Rava Teida, I'll bring you a raya. Shekach kaisev loy moichel lekech, the seller writes to the buyer, ano ikim ve'ashmi ve'itki ve'amrik. Zvini, that what does he write? I'm going to stand, v'ashapi, and be quiet, v'adaki, and make pure, v'amorik, zvini yilein, and clean the sale from anyone who's protesting. Einon, the property that you purchase, v'amalehon, and all the expenses, of course. Amaleon is the word that we're focusing on. Ushvachein, and the improvements. Same word. Ve'ekom kadamach, and I'm going to give it to you. V'tzavi zvina dinan, and this sale has been agreed upon these conditions. V'kabul uliyeh, and has been accepted. So we see clearly that he writes that he's going to pay him back for the improvements. So, and that's the raya to Shmuel. Then in this case of Baal Chayv, he'll pay back for the shvach. Amalei Rav Chia bar Avin the Rav Valameyato. Matana do ksiva lei. Matana, you don't write this, hachi. Hachanami, you're going to tell me the lotar of shvach, you're not going to get shvach. Amalei in, you're not going to get it. Chiyava kayach matana mi mecher. What's going on over here? It comes out that a matana is worse than a sale. Amalei in. Yafa. Indeed, it is better. Says the Gemara. And there will be a fundamental difference between a Baal Chayv and a matana that is given. Says the Gemara, let's bring a raya to Shmuel. Amar Rav Nachman amasnita Metziah le'lemar Shmuel. The following brisa is a raya to Shmuel. V'huna chavrin mukla b'mili achrini, but Huna, his friend, says no, it's not talking about the case of Shmuel, therefore there's no raya. Titania, we learned in a brisa, Someone sells a field to his friend, and the buyer loses the field. When the buyer comes to collect for his loss because he lost his field, the root, the main, the principal, he gets from mishubadim. So we see clearly that what the shevach, the improvements, he's able to collect. It says Rav Nachman v'huna chavrin, v'huna our friend Mukim Labamili Achrini says his brisa is talking about a different case. What's the case? But lekech mi gazlan, and therefore there's no raya because Shmuel only said his din by a bal chayiv and not by a gazlan. Tani Ida continues the Gemara 10 lines on the bottom. The first line is gazlan. Tani Ida someone sells a field to his friend, and that person improves the field. And a Baal Chayv comes and takes the field. So this brayso talks about collecting the shvach, the improvements, but not entirely. The improvements more than that which you expended. If it's a flip, then you only get your expenses. Shir shavach, the amount that it was improved. Mibal chayv. So says the Gemara, that's a brayso. So the brayso is toying with the same din of Shmuel, but going a little finer into the differences to how much improvement there was versus the cost of that. Says the Gemara of Shmuel b'may mukim la. What case does Shmuel explain this brayso is referring to? If you're going to tell me, it talks about that he bought it from the Gazlan Kasharesha. We know Shmuel Leslie Shavach, which is part A of today's whole shiur, that Shmuel holds by a Gazlan, there's no Shvach, only by the Baal Chayv. Baal Chayv Kasharesha v'Seif, Baal Chayv Shavach, that you get the entire Shavach, and you don't have to worry about the Yitzhak at all. So says the Gemara, Iba Yisema, 2 lines at the bottom. If you want, you can explain L'Kech Gazlan. And therefore, as we explained, there's no issue of Mechzi Kiribis because you're paying back his land. On the top of Tezvav Amud Aleph, the Gemara says there's 2 types of shvach. Magia l'chtafim means it reaches the shoulders literally, but it's referring to is we're dealing with shvach in which is readily improved at a certain level. As the top Rashi points out, karavli concerts ready to be harvested is elashadayin tzrichim lekarkav lekeperis gemurin. It's complete peiros. V'im bal chayv gayvay some below yitzias. Then you can't collect them without worrying about the yitzia, the price that was paid for them. Says Mar 1 second. The second teretz, we know that Shmuel yes allows such a collection. Says the Gemara, like Kasha Damasik Bekishir Aro Shvacha Hotoloi Masik Le Ella Kishir Aro. Fundamental difference. How much is the Baal Chayv wanting to collect? If he's collecting the value of the land and the Shavach, Hotoloi Masik, the other cases where he's collecting only the land without the Shavach. The Avle Shvacha Umesalik Le. Says the Gemara, 1 second. This itself is a brewing machlekes. We had this at the end of Baba Kama. This works according to the man Damar that a whole Yisli Zuzi Lokeach. Still Lumati Misalik Lilabal Chayv Shaber, that's fine. Elaman Damar. According to opinion, it says Kisli Zuzi Lokeach Mati Misalik Lilabal Chayv. Name Malay, let him tell him, if I had money, I would have removed you from the whole land. Even though I don't have money, Havli Garba Dara, take this piece of land, Be'ara, share Shvache, the amount of the Shvach that was done. Says the Gemara, you can't remove him by telling him to collect from elsewhere. Why not? Because you made an apoitiki. Apoitiki is in which you made a deal that you're only going to collect from this particular piece of field. And that concludes part B, which is Shmuel as it relates to a Baal Chayiv collecting the field from the Loikeach. Continues the Gemara. Now really we go back to the case of Gazlan. The two dots about 15 lines down to Zvavam and base. What is the story if the person who's buying the field realizes that this field is not the seller's, but he buys it anyways? Then what does he do? He puts money into it, he improves it, and then guess what? The one day the original owner comes and takes it back. So what do we do now? Says Rav, you get the price that you paid, but you're not going to get the improvements. Shmuel says, you get nothing. What are you doing? You bought yourself stolen goods, which you know about. Says the Gemara, what's the machlokes? Rav, the person knows the land's not his. So he feels, so it was given over as a pikadon. The name of Leila should be pikadon. Why didn't he tell him it's a pikadon? Savar lo mekabel. Thought he won't accept it. Shmuel savar no. He's embarrassed to say that. Says the Gemara, and guess what? This machlokes is not the first time we found this machlokes. Shmuel already had such a machlokes prior. Deitmar. We learned, the first line is Hamikadesh. So when he marries his sister, Rav Amar Ma'is Chayzrin, the money goes back. Shmuel Amar Ma'is Matana brings us back to our Kedushin days. And the Gemara explains the Gemara. Rav Amar Ma'is Chayzrin, why I'll do this? Everyone knows you can't marry your sister. So why did you try? Because the government also should be good, and you wanted to give her money as a collateral. Says the Gemara, why don't you just tell her name that should be called? And she's never going to accept the collateral. So how did you trick her to accept the collateral? By marrying her. Ushmuel Amar Ma'is Matana. Everyone knows you can't marry your sister. Why don't you just tell her because he's embarrassed and she's never going to take the money as a matana. So we have two different machlokes in bringing out the exact same yesod between Rav and Shmuel. Says the Gemara, Sricha, we need both of them. Says the Gemara, if we only had the case of our case, the case of buying stolen goods that you recognize, I would have thought, this is where Rav says this didn't why, because it's not normal people to give a matana to a random person. Maybe he's asking to Shmuel, because it's normal to give a matana to a sister. If you only said the second case of the sister, but in the first case, and therefore we need both cases. Says the Gemara, and with this we conclude, Bein the Rav, Bein the Shmuel, both according to Rav, the Amar, Pikad, Bein the Shmuel, the Amar, Matan. Ask the Gemara, 15 lines to the bottom. The first line is Hi. Hi la Rabbi Maikonochis. How does the guy who bought the stuff go work in the land, do peiros? And how is he allowed to consume the produce? If he's not really planning to buy the land, either it's a pikadon or it's a matana, so what's he doing? He's going down, he's working this land, he's eating the produce. What's going on? Says the Gemara, you know why? Savar, he thinks, I'm going to go work and eat the produce just like he would. When the owner comes, he thinks I'll just pay him for it. Matana, that's the reason why he would even go down, work the field, eat the produce. So we'll pick it up from Rava B'siyata Dishmaya.